What an honor it is to be here for so many different reasons. I am an unbelievable fan, as I'm sure many of you are, of President Clinton and all that he has accomplished. This wonderful school and having him as a namesake is truly, I think, a remarkable marriage. This is really a terrific opportunity. I love nothing. My favorite groups to talk to are students, by the way. And I'm not playing that to just the student crowd. I just want you to all understand, those of us that have been doing this work for a while now are getting to a point where we're getting tired and we need help. And having young people committed to bringing this to the next level is what it's all about. And I'm going to talk to you all today about a little bit about green building. I want to give you a kind of a baseline about that. But as you can tell by my slide there, and I've only got a few slides, I won't bore you with those, but I really want to dovetail this into a discussion on green schools. And these, for the most part, I'm thinking K through 12 schools, even though higher education and higher learning is a really critical part of all that. But I'll never forget it. Really, a transformational moment for me when I think about green buildings in the world that I live in was getting a call from a friend who is now the director of the Toledo Zoo in Ohio. She was a primate expert, and she was going to build a small green addition on this zoo she was working on in upstate New York. And she said, Rick, I want to understand LEED. What is LEED? And I want to better understand that. And I started to explain it to her, and she started shaking her head in almost disbelief. And I said, Ann, what is it? And she said, as a primate expert, I went to school to learn how to build the most amazing enclosures for monkeys. Clean air, clean water, non-toxic materials. We had to put a lot of daylight in. We had to make sure that the air was changed frequently, all in the idea of keeping this little monkey healthy. She goes, I just realized we don't do that for people. And she was exactly right. We had not. We have looked as a society over the years. I mean, if you go back 200 or 300 years ago, that's the way buildings were designed. They were designed for people to take advantage of what's free in nature, daylight, sunlight, wind, air, all of these things. That's how the structure was built. The ceilings were high, the windows were large. The building was functional and supported the human being. And then there was this very bizarre period between the 60s and I would argue the 90s, where I say the entire design community went into a coma. Because what was produced at that point were buildings that were more about the building than they were the human being. And losing sight of that and now regaining what we need to do to change all that is really what the green building movement is about. It's about putting the human being back inside of these boxes. And all they are is boxes. Some are prettier than others. And this is a lovely box, by the way, Dean, wherever you are. This is a lovely box, but we go home from this box to our home box, to a school box, to a healthcare box, and these buildings either treat us with dignity and make us healthier and more productive, or they can in fact hurt us in a lot of ways, which is going to bring me back to my school slide in a minute. But I could have come here today and talked to you about some of the coolest green buildings you've ever seen in your life. The 55-story, Bank of America Tower coming up on 1 Bryant Park in the center of Manhattan. It's this crystal glass structure, and it is just off the charts, just a beautiful building. But that's not what I want to talk about. I don't want to talk about the Bank of America Tower. I don't want to talk about some university buildings that are really beautiful, some claiming that they're carbon neutral or carbon positive. And they're somewhat boutique-ish kind of in their nature. When I get another 200 of those out there, I'll say the boutique-ishness stopped. This is now mainstream. This is where we need to go. But we're living in a time when our children, and you look at K through 12 education, you think of this is a place where we send teachers and children to every day, and sometimes they have to struggle with unbelievable conditions just so that they can hear what the teacher is saying, or they can overcome some really weird smells that are in this space, or the dust from the carpet that is breaking down exponentially and entering their lungs, and the daylight that is either there or not there, and the overhead lighting, which is horrific, and the computer screens that are from some little box that maybe somebody on the school board, 13 years earlier decided to get out of their basement, so they donated it to the school. And this place, and I'm not exaggerating here, I will tell the story in a way that makes you understand this, how severe this is. But there's 133,000 of these buildings out there today, and they're always at the end of the food chain. And I have a very strong belief that if we as a society get green schools right, we will get every other building type right. It will just happen, because we've all been to schools. We all are going to school now. We all have children or grandchildren in schools. We're on school board. We know that a school is functionally the center of the universe in a community, to one degree or another. What we've done for so long is just forgot how important those buildings are to our children. And I love this quote from Nelson Mandela: there can be no keener revelation of a society's soul than the way in which it treats its children. And if you think about it, we love our kids. God knows we love our kids. But, when we send them off to prison every morning and we demand they come home with A's and B's, and we get mad at them if they don't, we realize that we might have missed a few subtleties. We have, the U.S. Green Building Council has taken on as a mission, because again, we feel if we can get the schools right, then it will be impossible for any other building type to say, gee, we can't do that. We can't afford that. We can't understand that. We don't know what the impacts would be. And so when we say, this is our mantra, that we will provide green schools for every child within a generation. So we've got about 25, 30 years now. We are going to ensure that there's not one building that houses K through 12 kids in the United States that is not a green school. And we're on a real great kind of slowly growing but upward curve here that we feel really good about. And this is really not just about making a building pretty. This is not just about adding daylight and some non-toxic materials and making it cool. This is about putting an environment together where kids have the ability to thrive, where teachers have the ability to feel healthy and energetic. And children with that kind of energy and teachers with that kind of focus have the best connection point you could ever imagine. And my wife of 31 years is a third grade teacher, and so I know this world intimately. I know her really bad days. I know what teachers do to game the system. Teachers, God bless every one of them out there. Teachers will take a class that they know in a particular classroom cannot focus and cannot take an exam properly, and they will march them out to the cafeteria to give them that exam, or they will take them outdoors to give them an exam. They just understand their buildings. If they've been there for a while, they know what these buildings do and how they treat children. So the teachers take it upon themselves to bring in heaters, bring in their own ability to open up the daylight. If they can get fresh air in there, they have an open and close window policy that the teachers monitor. This is what we've done. We are focusing all our time on the highest levels of buildings, and yet when you look at what we are leaving our teachers and our children with, it's a very, very little end result. 55 million students and 5 million faculty, which is 20% of the U.S. population, go to school every day. Every day they go to school. And so when you think about it, I mean, it's kind of hard. You don't usually think that large of a group going. We spend $35 billion a year on taxes. Every one of us in this room, and for those of you that are students, someday you too will be able to pay taxes like this. We pay all this money in taxes, and as I mentioned, the 133,000 school buildings, I would say 98% of them are not today built to building code. They were all built 40 or 50, 60 years ago. And when you realize over time they have not been upgraded properly, you could put a building code next to it and you'd say, this building is illegal. There should not be people in this building, let alone our children, the future of our cities and our lives. 15,000 of the schools right now were monitored by the EPA and found that through EPA standards, the air is unfit to breathe. And you wonder why childhood asthma, you go to a soccer game today, look at the children, either sides of the field. You know, run in, Bobby, run in, Susie. And before they can run in, they're on the sidelines with their puffers because they have asthma at unprecedented rates. I won't say it's just the schools. I think our homes, I think our lack of understanding of a lot of things has to coalesce around helping to fix this problem. But when you start realizing that if there's 15,000 schools that the EPA would love to shut down if they could, because the air is unfit to breathe, this is a very scary thing for our future. And ultimately, you know, these are the evidence of a society that got a little bit out of touch with what we're about. I had a friend from Denmark. His name is Ole Fanger. He passed away a couple of years ago. One of the world's most renowned indoor air quality experts. And he used to tell me this story that I loved. He'd say, oh, he says, you Americans are so funny. He says, you know, when your wife comes home and says she's going to have a baby, what is the first thing you do? And I'm like, gee, I don't know, like champagne or maybe? No. He says, first you paint your bedroom. He says, and then you put paint on the floor and finish the floor, and then you put down new carpet. And then you go buy white painted furniture that probably just came off of a boat from China, off-gassing. He could name every one of 27 volatile organic compounds. And then he would say, you do this and you do that, and everything you surround the baby with is not natural. It's man-made fabrics and materials and plastics. He said, and then because you're all Americans, you lock the windows. You're afraid of everything. And I'm waiting for the punchline. And he said, and you have just put your baby, your brand new baby, in the perfect gas chamber. And if you think about it, you know, guilty is charged twice. Oh my God, you know, we're having a baby. You know, I want my child to experience the most amazing Martha Stewart kind of cool nursery that anybody could ever imagine. But what didn't we know? We didn't know that the off-gassing of the finishes and off-gassing of brand new carpet and formaldehyde times, you know, multiple levels that nobody should be exposed to, let alone a brand new baby with brand new lungs. You put that in a room with bad ventilation or tight ventilation. If you live in the north like I do, middle of winter, you've locked everything up. You're just circulating air over and over again. It is frightening. So we as individuals and homeowners need to understand this as well, because we have an important part of that ultimate use of asthma inhalers by our kids. But our schools, what we need to bring to our schools, what we need to bring into our personal spaces, what we need to bring is a certain amount of education that says that you can't blame yourself too much about what you didn't know, but once you know, you have a moral obligation to never go back that way again. You know, when you look at, this is an actual school classroom in Seaside, California, and these are children with a lot of emotional and educational problems. This group of kids, by the way, were some of the most severely dyslexic kids in the school. And this was not a staged photo. What happened is the photographer roamed the halls all day long looking for these kids. And these kids are in probably one of the prettiest schools you could ever imagine, with a view that's like $1 billion view. But they're actually, because they feel so good and so safe in that space, they're reading and enjoying for the first time their ability to communicate with a book. And let's see if I can do that. So, you know, what do we do to take these? You have to watch this one closely because the lighting isn't too good, but to take these traditional classrooms, because this isn't all, nobody can afford to go out and just rebuild every one of those 133,000 schools. So the renovation of these schools is going to be just as critical. And there's this cute little animation right now. You watch it turn to a green school. A couple of little things there. But watching the ability for us to turn these schools into something that our children can then, therefore, have a meaningful education. A lot of that starts with the beginning to understand what needs to be done in the first place. And that's where the U.S. Green Building Council and the LEED rating system, and I'm really, really excited to be a part of a movement that as a not-for-profit organization, we are actually changing lives. Now, we talk about LEED every day. We talk about the number of LEED buildings, schools, healthcare, retail settings, office buildings, homes, all these things. And it's sometimes easy to get caught up in the numbers about the kinds of buildings, the number of buildings you're doing. But we have to keep forcing ourselves back into the equation of it's about the people inside of these buildings, inside of the boxes. If you take the name buildings off these and put boxes, it's easier to focus on the people that we have put within them. But when you look at LEED, LEED is really just a very elegant way to understand, maybe for the first time, what is going on. How does the building sit on the site? What is the air quality? What kind of materials are in here? How much energy does it use? How much water does it use? It really gives you this kind of holistic thinking about what's going on with the building. And I like to, I'm not an architect or an engineer. I am an accounting undergraduate with an MBA, go figure. And when people say to me, what is LEED? I actually pull out the wonderful little 89-cent box of animal crackers. Because I like to point out, if you can take a box of animal crackers and you can look at the side of it and it can tell you how much fat, how much protein, how much carbohydrates and sodium is in that box. And you, as a consumer, have the ability to choose it or not. You have the ability to decide that, your children should not eat that. Or your aging parent, it might not be good for their health. There's no reason why you shouldn't have that same label on the side of a building. And that's exactly what LEED does. It gives you that nutrition label to tell you how much energy, how much water, what kind of materials are in the space, what are the things about that building that make it important for me as a consumer to make a more informed decision. If I am a parent and I'm bringing my child in to look at a school in a new district, and my child has the ability in a green school to have a 20% better test score overall on average, 28% better reading retention, a 40% reduction of respiratory illnesses. If I've done the research as a parent and I want my child to have that kind of thing, I want to walk up to a school and see that it's actually been third-party verified by an organization like U.S. Green Building Council to say that it will perform this way. And my child will go in and my child will have the ability to have an experience like that. One of the things, this is a slide that I showed I spoke at the ACU PCC meeting in Chicago a few months ago, and these were the American College and University Presidents for Climate Change. And this is a great group, 600 or more were there, focused on the ability to affect climate change through their purchasing and directions on campus. And yet, what I realized was out of this group of 600 universities represented, 30 or 40 of them had actually done what the dean was saying today that we were going to do here at the Clinton School, and that is build the building or redesign the building to a LEED standard and actually bring it through the process and get the certification. Well, when I talked to the 75% of the population that was at this meeting, they said, well, gee, we built it to the LEED rating system, but it was going to cost too much to get it certified, so we just didn't get it certified. And it took me a few minutes to realize that these folks are university presidents are in the third-party verification business, offering diplomas to students for work performed and verified is a third-party certification business. So when I pointed that out, they gave me a little bit of that, and I said, well, okay, I'm always one for going a little bit further on the drama than I need to. So I said, okay, here, let me put it in these terms. You're laying on your operating table, your surgeon walks in with a scalpel and says, you know what, Mr. Fedrizzi, I went to 6 years at Yale Medical School, but it was going to cost too much to stick around and get the degree. But trust me, I went through it all, I've got this, trust me. Nobody is going to trust anybody in that regard. The buildings we've gone back to verify that were not certified by the USGBC have between 20 and 40% delta in inefficiencies based on the way that they weren't building commissioned, so you don't know how they're actually going to perform. They weren't energy modeled in the first place, so you really don't know what your baseline of savings is. The only costs that these folks have to deal with are, for the most part, the building commissioning and the energy modeling. Those are the two most expensive parts. And by doing those, it proves that you've done the work. It proves that you are worthy of letting that mom and dad bring their child into that school and say, you know what, I know this building will perform, and that's why I want to have them here. And we're talking about schools, but you can have the same. There's a lot of green hospitals, LEED-rated hospitals right now that are going up. And if you think in healthcare how important it is, a building commissioning agent told me, if you don't commission an office building, you can have a lot of people with head colds complaining about how the air quality in the building is terrible. If you don't commission a hospital, you can have a lot of dead people. Because of the way that viruses travel and air travels, and ultimately there needs to be, this is a science and we need to treat it like a science, but we know that it's got a tremendous opportunity. And especially because of the fact schools and universities overall, I mean, these buildings are owned for life by the universities. A school district owns those schools basically for life. So any improvement, how dare somebody say, a 3-year payback is just not going to work for us. But what about the other 30 years after the 3 years that you could benefit from? But ultimately, you're still thinking about a return on investment versus the child in the first place. So these are all the questions we're working through. We know times are tough right now, but what we've seen is a tremendous amount of positive economic return information on these things. I come from a business background. So the way that we have had, the U.S. Green Building Council right now is a 20,000 member organization. We are growing at a rate that is unprecedented as far as an environmental NGO is concerned. And the reason is I have really forced our organization to always, no matter what we do, and even though my default is to the child or to the human being in these buildings, I will always make the business case first. Because if you can't prove to your bank or to Wall Street in general that green building is the most intelligent move you could ever make, then nothing else will happen. And I think that's why we're starting to see such a positive uptake in green building, because we have been making the business case. This is Rivercrest Elementary in Wisconsin. The building upon completion, 30% energy savings, 40% water savings, huge amount of money or waste diverted from the landfill. But 29%, the constructed price was 29%, the average in the region for the new construction of a school. And when you start looking at the fact that these case studies exist today, I know that's a number that's hard to believe back there, it is, but when you start bringing into this all of the ancillary costs, all of the opportunity, the educated teams starting very early in the process in order to get this done, and talking to the folks today from, thank you, the construction firm that just achieved LEED Gold this morning. The conversation there was the first LEED Gold attempt by this organization, probably a 4% increase in cost. So if that's the first thing, and you've done multiple schools or multiple buildings, you can imagine that learning curves brings your cost down and down and down. So. And a lot of that really happens because of the integration of the products, the materials, the services, the systems. A huge amount of cost can come out of a project just because when you do a green building, you have what's known as a design charrette. You bring everybody together early in the process for a kind of a workshop. But it's the first time ever, I mean, since, well, maybe ever, that we are forcing people together that never played well together. We will bring the window, the lighting, and the air conditioning and heating folks together at one table, and we will let them hammer out the system for this building. And ultimately what happens, for the most part, is with the proper windows and lighting, the mechanical system can often be cut in half, size-wise, and the performance increase dramatically. And there's, that happens in every other part of the equation by just bringing this team together early on. When you start doing that, you can start looking at the ability to take that money and the savings and put it back into the classrooms and into schools that really start to change the way that we look at things. There was a group of organizations that did a study of 100 LEED-rated schools and they found on average $100,000 in savings available to them after the first year of operation of these schools. $100,000 in a school budget today would be like, you know, just a gift from God. It is very hard. Those are the toughest budgets that they have. And ultimately, being able to put that money, you could hire 2 more teachers with $100,000. You could buy 200 computers. You could buy 5,000 textbooks. There's a lot of different things you could do. This is the West Brazos Junior High School in Texas. Oops, sorry about that. 4, 5, and 7% increase. These are productivity increases for the children in their testing. It was built for 18% less than the average junior high school in the region, again, based on comparable rates. And again, the other thing that brings costs down here is because the entire green process makes everybody focus so the old days are gone. The old days, the linear format where, you know, the owner, the school district, whoever calls up the architect, and the architect says, great, I'll take care of it. And then there's this linear line of cost that's added along the line. That's gone, because now with this team coming together in the beginning, they have the ability to really look at prices in a way you could never look at them before. And people are committed to what they sign up for, and ultimately you drive through a much better end result cost-wise. Water savings, this is great, Seneca Creek Elementary School in Maryland. But these are actual schools. And I just like to, you know, I like to think, you know, you've got a 5-year-old who's leaving his mom for the first day of school, and instead of walking into some of the scary classrooms we all remember from our youth, that they walk into a front door like that, and you think about what kind of vibrant connection can happen between teachers and students. This is a school in one of the worst neighborhoods in Chicago, this is a school where at least one child who used his asthma inhaler every day for 2 or 3 years has now thrown away his asthma inhaler. The school had that much of a difference on him. We're also looking at a number of studies right now, and our youth today is well aware of what these buildings are and what they like. And they're starting to now interview, when they go to college, they're starting to ask questions about what kind of buildings are on campus and what can I expect as far as a living opportunity. We're trying to drive a lot of this through, you know, because we know that I have always believed that the green building movement should be a voluntary movement, except for schools. And I've only come to that conclusion over the last year and a half. It will take forever for us to, in a voluntary fashion, get every school within a generation green. So what we're starting to do is we're starting to use advocacy as a very important tool. We're using our chapter organizations, 78 of them around the United States, terrific one here in Arkansas with some really terrific leaders who've been doing a great job. Each of those has a green schools advocate that works specifically on green schools in those areas. We have all 50 states, we have 30 states out of the 50 right now represented in a caucus on Capitol Hill focused on green schools. USGBC is convening that. We have a similar alliance for mayors working in cities at the city level to try to drive this. We'd love every mayor and every governor to have a mandate for LEED. You use $1 of public money for the renovation or the construction of a school, it must be a third-party verified LEED-rated school. That is how you as a taxpayer can feel very good about the way your money's being spent, because it wasn't spent carelessly, and it does have a lot more focus. The Coalition for Green Schools that we're leading and the ones that conducted that study included not only USGBC, but the National PTA, the National Education Association, the American Federation of Teachers, the American Association of School Administrators, and the National School Boards Association. The reason why I'm telling you all that, these are the most important organizations in the academic world related to K through 12 in the United States. They are coming together saying, we want in big time. We believe this is where we have to go, and they want to be with us. And this is my last to closing slide, and it's a really bad photo because it was taken on a iPhone, but this is a wonderful little girl in the school is the Langston Hughes Academy in New Orleans. This was the first public school built after Hurricane Katrina, and it was open. This is the first day, and this little girl walked into her green school, and that was the look on her face when she saw something that looked dramatically different than what she was used to. And I think this is the kind of look we have to put on every child's face, because if we expect them to go through classes and get good grades and ultimately be very strong in their communities and lead the next generation on to bigger and better things, then we've got to show them right now we care about them. And there is no better way to show them this than through the kind of buildings they are in every day, the fact that they can go to school and look at it as just a literal breath of fresh air. When I was here a couple of years ago, and Martha J. Murray brought me to the Camp Aldersgate LEED building. I forgot if that was a LEED Gold or it was a LEED Gold building, and we were indoors in this beautiful daylit space, and the kids, you know, were just screaming at the top of their lungs, and one of the counselors was like, you know, use your indoor voices. But the kids were so confused because in a truly beautiful green space, the indoors is as vibrant as the outdoors. So you just don't know, you just feel that good, and that's what we really need to have happen at our schools. That is the pivotal point of where this will all start to transform exponentially. And with that, I will turn it back over to you for some Q&A. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Patrick and Lydia series. We have two mics roaming around over there. Forget about it. Please raise your hand, point to you, and we'll wait for the mic. Start right there.
How is the council funded?
The council is a 501c3 nonprofit. We earn about 98.5% of our own way. I am proud to say right now that we're somewhere between $90 and $100 million as an organization. We fund ourselves through our membership. We have 20,000 organizational members. We have a very large conference called Green Build. We have a tremendous amount of educational workshop, reference guide manuals, our LEED accreditation for becoming a LEED AP, all part of that educational opportunity. And the thing that we make zero money on is certifying buildings. That is a loss leader from the standpoint of making any money as an organization. So really, our organization and what we do is an educational play more than anything else. The certification is critical, as I mentioned, on all fronts, but ultimately it is through the organization being a kind of focused as a learning institution in many ways. Thank you.
Rick, my question's from my friend McCrae up in Minneapolis. He and we are both parts of the indoor landscaping industry, so
Sure.
My question comes from that angle. Based upon the principles of evidence-based design, when can we expect the Green Building Council to begin including points for products that improve occupant health and well-being, such as green plants and green walls? My lovely associate joined me.
I love people that bring props to meetings. I absolutely, because I used to travel with my box of crackers, animal crackers, and then they got all broken and crumbly, and I stopped that. But actually, and I'm going to have to ask my friend Chris over here to help me. But the actual biophilia, the points for planting inside spaces. Don't we offer, isn't there something there right now?
Well, this is an area of change, and one thing I would recommend is that the lead rating system is going through a transformation. It used to be that they update the rating system every year and a half, and now it's
There is a professor at Yale, Stephen Kellert, who has actually come up with this huge biophilia movement. And essentially, and what they've done is they've actually put together studies. And one of the studies was from a hospital in Colorado. And people with a view to nature, and actually you had to see a tree, you had to see plant life, left their beds after a major surgery 2.5 days sooner than others. And so that was one of a couple of studies. Are starting to do more on that right now. But there is no doubt, if you take a green space, you can take any space. You know, this is a lovely space right here, but that tree in the back, which I'm quite sure is real. It is. Yes. It actually makes you as a human being feel different and more comfortable in the space than you would if that tree was not here. So I totally get that, and I know that we have 100 credits in every version of LEED, and ultimately there are groups of people right now, committees, studying the inclusion and exclusion of a number of those credits. So I have no doubt that there will be a very strong plant-based ethic there at some point.
And I will say just another thing, there is a innovation credit. It's basically an opportunity for if your idea does not fit directly within a current credit, then there's an opportunity there to put forth an argument around that credit and to present it to the LEED reviewers.
Question to you back there, Anna.
Hi, my name's Anna Strong, and I'm a student here. I'm also a Master's of Public Health student, and you mentioned several examples of you know, bringing your baby to a perfect gas chamber, and the kid who was able to lose his inhaler after he started going to a green school. And so I'm curious about what type of partnerships you're working with in the public health field to educate families and parents on not only the impact of non-green buildings in, you know, in their schools and everything else, but also in their homes, so that you can draw in a different sector of supporters, maybe that might not be as concerned about the environmental impact as a whole, or, you know, the personal investment, return on investment, but as a personal health, a public health issue. Thank you.
A lot of what we are able to do in LEED is basically cite, because we are not a medical body per se, but what we are able to do is we're able to cite a lot of third-party studies that people have done that have looked at every part of the green building, whether it's daylight. I mean, there are studies on daylight that you know, scientifically prove that children in daylit spaces have better health. Even down to reduction in cavities, that there is this positive effect. We have to really rely on a lot of those independent studies for the information that we cite going forward. We have our LEED for healthcare standard, which is going to be released very shortly. We worked with the Green Guide for Healthcare folks who had really been developing a healthcare manual for a long time to look at the way that these buildings could be done in a way that, again, not only supported the wonderful, you know, life of a healthy human, but if you do, or if you are in a healthcare facility, if you have a compromised immune system, if you've got a number of different problems, that the space itself would enhance that opportunity. And I think what we've seen is we've seen some really, really positive things. I know that the ability for us to almost mandate, I can't imagine a hospital project today that is not third-party building commissioned. And what they're finding are some really dramatic changes to the spread of disease within a hospital setting. How, you know, that there are a number of other directly health-related issues. Some of the things we can't control right now, we have to better understand, are the issues related to waste. In hospitals, there's a tremendous amount of toxic waste, more or less. Those are the things that I think once the LEED for Healthcare standard is out there, once the ability for people to look at innovation credits, as was mentioned, to be able to think outside the box. You know, the LEED rating tool is only as good as it is the day it's released and the people that are using it. What's wonderful about that point is that becomes the baseline from which people then will put in new ideas, work with the committees, and change it to the positive. Thank you.
Question. You're right there.
Hi, I work for Habitat for Humanity here in Pulaski County, and we've just recently started building to much higher, greener standards. But I was curious to hear about you and your organization and what you think about the green building movement in poverty housing.
Sure. Yeah, we call it affordable housing, and it's we have been working very closely with the Home Depot Foundation for a number of years. The Home Depot Foundation has been able to work with USGBC and the Enterprise Community Partners Organization and Habitat for Humanity. We have put the LEED rating system into Habitat's hands and assisted them in a way that we now have, I think, 78 Habitat houses that are LEED rated, and hundreds more in the pipeline. Again, as I have a certain affinity to kids in schools, I also have a very strong feeling that clean air, non-toxic materials, and a healthy home is a basic human right. It's not anything that should be connected with any kind of economic bracket. Sadly, in a way, green gets its kind of, glitz right now from Hollywood, and, eco bling attached to any old box is a really exciting thing, and people think that's what a greenhouse is. But you can have the most understated, elegant, Habitat home built by folks in the community, and that building can perform in an unbelievable way that just gives, people that live there a wonderful quality of life. So we are very big supporters and work actively on the entire affordable housing side of the equation.
You're right there. Yes.
Hi. I have a question. Here in Little Rock, especially in North Little Rock as well, we have several public schools which are historical buildings like Central High, North Little Rock High, Woodrow. And everything you're saying, I understand. I'm a graduate of Central. And we did have those problems. We had the mold in the carpets and the ceilings falling in and all that. But at the same time, it sounds like to me, and this could be wrong, that you're wanting to completely eliminate those schools and build all new. No. Okay,
Nope.
cool.
Yep. No. You can't take away the historic fabric of a community. If you do, then the community will lose its identity. Absolutely not. That's why the LEED for Existing Building program allows you to figure out what is the best way to get into these schools and renovate them. And you know what? There will be a point at which some of the schools, I would guess, will work very hard to try to get to a LEED rating and may not achieve that. But the idea that every building can have all of the toxic materials eliminated, the great majority of them, the hardest part, I think, is going to be, the easiest part, believe it or not, are the windows and the lighting. The hardest part is going to be developing a mechanical system that has the real, truly high-performance ventilation characteristics and energy characteristics all a part of it. I think water will be another issue that's a little bit complicated. But I think in that case, the most effort should be and would be put into the heating, the air conditioning, and most importantly, the ventilation of the building. But those buildings, for the most part, are battleships. And if they are insulated properly and people use them for the way that the building, what I hate to see in those buildings where people think they're going to save energy, so they like black out windows like that and they cover them up. And if you're going to do it, then somebody needs to put the money into it to do it right. Bring the building back to a point where it was a beacon in the community. Everything happened from there, and it can be done. There's a lot of if you get on the USGBC website, we have a number of green schools, and there's a lot of schools that have gone through that baseline renovation process, and more to come.
Question. You over there. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Dinah Nash. I've been a public school teacher, and I just wanted to tell you a couple of little adventures I've had. One in England where the poisons from the cotton field spray drifts in to the area of the schools. There's not a window, as far as I know, in that school that opens. But when the kids are out on the playground, there's the cotton field spray going on. I don't know what all pesticides are in that. But anyway, and then in the Springdale High School many years ago where I taught, where they would burn the milk cartons in the kitchen, the lunch trash, all afternoon, and it would waft in our openable windows. But so there's some outside school building issues that also need to be addressed, and I wonder what
Absolutely.
you know about things that are going on about that. Thank you.
Well, one of the major parts of LEED, whether it's schools or any other kind of building type, is the siting and how the building is put on the site and what kind of things are going on around it. Certainly, I don't think burning trash is probably a current issue. I hope not, anyway. But there are issues that really need to be. I mean, pesticides is an ongoing issue that a lot of people just think, well, you know, the kids aren't here tonight, so I can just spray this stuff. Well, they forget the fact that the kids are going to be rolling around in that tomorrow. So those are issues that LEED does address, and ultimately we have to do more. You mentioned your anecdotal stories. I got a little picture one day from a school teacher in a state that I won't mention, and she said we need to do something about this. And all I saw was a picture of a little boy and his classmates around him, and he had like a couple of teeth missing, and he was drinking from a fountain with a big smile on his face. And I'm thinking, well, this lady was a nut. I mean, this kid's a happy kid. Until I saw the little sign above his head that said, no drinking lead. And when I sent a note back to the principal of the school, the note I got back was, well, they should not be drinking from that fountain. That is a fountain the teachers use to water their plants with. And, you know, I felt like I just got hit with a ruler. But ultimately, we just have to teach people that those things are no longer acceptable.
We have time for one more question. Adam, how about you back there?
Hi, my name is Adam Moreland. I'm a student here. I worked for 3 years with New Orleans area Habitat for Humanity. They've taken some steps in rebuilding New Orleans to be as green as possible. They're working with Energy Star. And you talked a little bit about how it's misinformation that it's a lot more expensive to build green. I was wondering how much you're working with companies that create green building products to form partnerships with organizations like Habitat for Humanity to make those materials as affordable as possible and to get the information out there that it is in fact not that much more expensive to build green.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. There are, when I say, I actually feel very confident today saying that it does not cost more to build green in certain market segments. In the new construction market right now, we have absolute evidence that an educated team coming together early in the process with someone who has done 2, 3, or 4 LEED buildings before that can build that building for not a penny more than conventional construction, probably to the certified silver, maybe even gold. People out on the Pacific Northwest said they can bring in platinum for that price too, but we'll leave it at the silver or gold level, okay? When you get into the existing building arena, it's a different story. Right now, it is the problems I mentioned on the mechanical systems and an old school, the insulation, how you get to the lighting, what kind of window structures, all of those things right now force that to be more expensive than would be if it was a new construction project. But ultimately, we will, over time, drag those prices down too. When you start looking at the fact, we just came back from our Green Build conference last week. We had 1,800 exhibitors on the floor. These are the largest companies down to the smallest companies. These are companies where 2 to 3 years ago, their products didn't exist. So the green building movement is helping to develop this whole new, the Obama administration loves the fact that the green building movement is starting to push forward a lot of those green jobs. You start looking at where these jobs are coming from. A lot of it is coming from this part of the economy and the segment that we're talking about. But when you start looking at the fact that these are new manufacturers, new products, they're getting to the point where they're trying to figure out their way. What will happen is, I think that we will, if I had to guess, the green building movement will get to a point within the next 3 years where it will be absolute. And by that, what I mean is you will not be able to build any other way than a green building. You must, city ordinances, federal mandates, whatever it may be, you must have a certain amount of energy performance. You must use so much water. You must not have this kind of waste. There will be these things that kind of form that. And that's when the people that are sitting on the fence relative to product development will say, okay, there's nothing holding us back now, let's go for it. with exponential growth in products and materials and services will come excess, which will then hopefully very quickly transfer to the affordable housing markets that need it. When I used to work for a manufacturer years ago, and at the end of every year, after they had like a good year or a bad year, you know, they would have this excess inventory, and that was what a manufacturer would say, okay, this is what we can donate immediately. They don't usually build new stuff to go right into that market, but they figure out how to manage their books appropriately. So there's a number of ways to go around it, but our job, if we have one job to do, our job is to make this so stupid simple on how to build these buildings and how to obtain these materials that, again, there is no economic bracket that ever stops one organization from having green performance and another not.